Welcome back. We have our last and third part, or a third and last part.
How exciting.
Yes. You just got to run through a couple of things. We have hopefully given you some information about China and the Chinese market and the Chinese tools used there, the Chinese social media and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Now it's more about how do you as an SME actually using these tools to draft your own marketing strategy for China. So let's jump into it.
Yeah.
The process is maybe some quite self-explanatory. It's basically a process which you need to do before you come to China. Make sure that you have all the papers in order. And then there's a digital marketing phase where you basically do the digital marketing, the market entry, that's sort of the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do some evaluation, hopefully at least, during or after that process. So it's going to take you step by step through this. The first step being the business and legal.
Yeah.
So this you do.
So make sure that you have control on your your companies in China and like the international property rights. So protect your IPs, and for further support, you can check out the links downstairs, the EU SME Center, and also like the China IPR SME help desk, because it's very different, like the legal framework, the legal system. So make sure you get these things right.
And it sort of start with your names. Just make sure that you have a trademark on the name.
Yeah.
You need to register all your products and so on and so forth. We're not going to talk about this. There is plenty of good material on the website, and there's plenty of good training material as well. So just take a look at that. Make sure everything is fine before you move forward to the next step.
Yeah. So obviously you need to do like market entry planning, like what we talk about in the first training section. Like you need to do like background research and then segmentation, and know who your target audience is, and then do a deeper like market research.
So we're going to take step by step.
Yep.
So the first, and we have seen this on SMEs coming to China which have no idea about China. They all say they have the best product.
Yeah.
And this is good, and we hope all of them are right, and you are right as well. You most likely have a really good product. But if there is not a market, it doesn't really help. So the first thing is to understand is sort of how does the category of your product work here in China? Is there a market? Is there any regulations which has sort of been tied to that?
Especially when you export your products to China, like figure out like the details of it, like whether there's like any bans on your product category, and don't, like building on what Bjorn just said, like don't just assume that because China is so big and has a lot of money that it will generate like a market automatically, and also don't assume what you have in your local country would apply to China as well.
Yes.
So do your basic research.
Yes. There's like the saying of selling sand in Sahara. So I think it's the same selling like forks and knives in China where everybody uses chopstick. The market is different than Europe, and just check it. The second thing is you need to understand your competitors. China is a big market, but it's also filled with a lot of good brands and a lot of good products. So make sure that you have an understanding of the major players, but also the niche players if you're trying to go into some kind of niche market. There is a lot of people offering most likely something which you already, or what you have in your product portfolio, it's most likely here. Just make sure to understand what they are doing and their pricing and all these kind of things.
Just one example, if you're looking at selling your products on e-commerce platforms, you can just do a very easy search on a platform on Tmall, let's say like baby food or juice, and then because the most popular products will be displayed first, so you can just look at like the first few pages of results, and you know like who your biggest competitors would be.
Yes. And the third thing is to try to understand the reason why people actually are buying these kind of products. Every product is sort of helping people in their daily life. They're solving some kind of problems or pain points, and understanding that is sort of quite not only interesting, but it's quite necessary actually. And then also understanding cultural aspects of buying. We mentioned the single day coming up. We have Chinese New Year's. There is different kind of buying patterns which is sort of connected to the Chinese culture, which is quite interesting to follow up on.
Yeah, but on this part, you may need to do some secondary research in Chinese to understand the sector that you are looking at.
Yes. And then, of course, understand the market size, the market growth, all this kind of thing. What is the prices, the sales numbers? Is there any seasonal variations? And you also would like to understand this in a geographical space. Like if you're selling winter clothes in the south of China, you're going to have a harder time than if you're selling winter clothes in the north of China. So try to understand your market and how this is really working. And this brings us to sort of the people who are buying. So the first thing which is quite necessary to do is while understanding the market of China, try to segment the different kind of people into different kind of segments.
Yeah, as you talk about in the first section, that China is a huge market, and like different provinces or even different cities have different very profile, and within like different geographical profile, you have different demographics.
Yes.
You have different income level. So be very careful how you segment your customers.
And a segment is characterized by being internally homogeneous. That means everybody within that segment has something common. That be sort of the demographics, like everybody is like in the mid-20s or the 20s, or they're born before the 80s or so. Or they can be like geographical, or they can be the buying power, like income and so.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that segment is heterogeneity towards other segments, which means if this segment has some kind of internal homogeneity, is also different than other segments. So what you would like to try to find is a segment which has some kind of uniqueness, which is fitting your brand and which is sort of working. And this brings us to the target group and the selection of the target group. So if you select one target group, that's basically just one segment. So and this may, as you see on this chart, is sort of one of these slices of the huge market. But that sort of is nothing else than actually people, right? So you try to find these people which you are selling to, and that's sort of based upon the brand fit, which you have, the market size, the market growth. And you can also sort of do some blue oceans, red oceans, where are the competitors, what are they doing, do something different, and so on and so forth. We have an example. So this is an example we did for a European SME, where we looked into selling one of their products here. The primary market for these was the young urban workers in tier 1 cities. So this is sort of a very growing market, of course, with the young people. And we did a calculation. I'm not sure if these numbers are correct anymore, but there was like 80 million people in phone. But okay, this is sort of the primary market you have. Then they would like to have a secondary market as well, being sort of the tier 2 cities. This can be different, and you can then sort of target these kind of a bit differently when it comes to the market communication. That doesn't mean that you're not selling to other people. So you still have other people who are also buying into this be the Chinese upper middle class. So your reach with your marketing communication can be much higher than actually your target group. So don't be afraid to be like a niche brand or be a niche product. And most likely you already are, because you are a smaller brand. You're not one of these big corporations, which is totally fine. But then also find like your niche here in China and sell directly to them. And then you're most likely going to see that niche is also sort of affecting other people around them, and that sort of becoming the secondary or the sort of the expanded target group.
Yep. And even if you're only saying to one niche market in China, when you talk about the absolute numbers,
yes,
you have millions. It's still millions.
It's still many, yeah. So that's right. I think that's sort of the general advice when it comes to SMEs. Make sure that you're spending your marketing budget correctly, and find those people who are really interested in that kind of thing you are doing. And then if that's a niche into something really specific, that's good because it's still many people.
Yes, and don't be overly ambitious to set like targets. Like I think you set like to 1 million Chinese in the first month. But imagine that if you find your niche market, maybe even just like 1,000 Chinese, if they spread the word,
Yes.
they create this viral online, that it will definitely bring more business to you. So be very specific and targeted to reach your audience, and like do careful research like before entering.
So to do this in a proper way, you need to do some market research. And Chris, you have been doing market research quite often.
Yeah, quite often. And lately, I've been like looking on different markets as well, like for different SMEs, and I realized that like don't rely on Google, especially looking at Chinese data. Like don't imagine that you can just type baby food market in China and get all the data you want. To start with, you need to use Baidu. Perhaps maybe a few more search engines like Sogo or Shema, and also like search in Chinese. So again, if you don't really have like any Chinese capabilities, it will be very difficult to just think you can do everything in English, Google Translate. Still start with like a desktop research first.
Yes.
And then when, especially if you have someone connected to the Chinese market, or maybe Chinese employee or local partners, they can help to reach your target groups once you've identified them.
Yes.
And do like deeper, longer user interviews.
Yes.
And they will help you focus like what their real needs, their real pain points are.
Yes. And I think it's a bit depending on what you are searching for, and it all sort of boils down to that you would like to have the intelligence to make a successful market entry.
Yeah.
And insight is power. So you need to have that insight, and you get that insight through sort of your acting yourself and so on, but through reaching out to the public through the desktop research. Google is not so good. Do the Baidu, do that in Chinese.
Yeah.
And then sort of the next step is do the quantitative research, questionnaires, look into sort of buying patterns, use the social media to do research as we talked about with the search engine trends and so on. And then of course if you would like to really dig deep into the consumer's mind, you need to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
So this is where you do the interviews, the focus groups, and so on and so forth. And all this is sort of boiling down to some very important part is know your market and customers as early as possible. And it's cheaper to sort of have somebody here to do sort of very short desktop research, and that's going to save you a lot of time and money later on.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So there's a couple of different kind of adaptation we need to do when we come to China, right?
Yep, exactly. We talk about this briefly in previous training sections. We can adapt the name, the design, and the marketing communication materials.
So let's start with the name. And I mean, you are Chinese and speak English also perfectly well. There is a different kind of way of doing naming here, right?
Yep. We have identified like 5 types of naming adaptations, as you can see on the slides here. So to start with, you cannot do any adaptation and create a new local brand like Heineken. The Chinese is Xi Li, which does not sound like Heineken and does not mean anything like Heineken.
And I think the reason why they do that is to avoid any problem with like dialects or translation. You can basically pick a new name and it saves you a lot of work. But the drawback is of course then you missing the link to the brand. So you don't have any sort of the legacy of the brand with you, the history and so on. And it only works here in China. We said Xi Li. In Europe, I don't know what you do.
People
get something else in the bar, I guess.
Yeah. Another way is to do it with the sound. So the Chinese name would sound exactly like the English name, or the original language in French or whatever, Italian. So in this example, we have like Alfa Romeo,
yes,
and in Chinese like Alfa Romeo, But basically, the Chinese name like closely resembles the English name here. Yeah.
And this is quite common to do this, and many like to do that. And the reason for that is to maintain that global brand identity. So I know Audi is doing the same as Audi, and it works sort of around the world. But of course, it doesn't really mean anything in Chinese. So if your brand has some kind of meaning in the name, that's sort of totally lost.
Yeah.
And it's also much harder for the Chinese consumers to remember that. And it, in worst case of scenario, has some really strange meanings.
Yeah. So make sure you double check like the Chinese characters when you choose this kind of sound adaptation, and of course like find a Chinese to do that for you.
So you have to have some local sound. The meaning adaptation is a bit different then, because this is a way you don't really sound like the brand you are, like the way you're speaking it, but the meaning of the word are the same in Chinese and English.
Yeah. So in this case, it's like general electricity. In Chinese, it's like 通用电器, which are totally different in terms of the sounds, but the meaning they are almost identical.
Yes. And of course, this is it doesn't have any variation according to dialects, for instance, and it has like the meanings stay the same. It may be spoken differently, but the meanings stay the same. But it can create some kind of global issues when it comes to the market, like the global market, and Chinese tourists abroad get really confused sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And we also have like dual adaptations that brands spend more time to adopt like locally the name in both sound and meaning. In this case is BMW. In Chinese like 宝马. It has a meaning that is like treasure horse, which is something that is very fancy in Chinese culture. So it conveys the quite a good class of like BMW's class, but at the same time it doesn't really lose the sound of BMW 宝马. Similar, I would say. Yeah.
Coca-Cola is quite good as well.
Yeah, Coca-Cola. Yeah, it's very similar.
Yes. So the issue here is it's quite difficult to find, and you should have some luck to sort of match both the sound and the meaning. So you may go for a hybrid adaptation, which Starbucks have done. This is sort of where you sort of pick and choose all of these different kind of depending on
elements. Yeah,
different kind of elements.
So for instance, like Starbucks is called 星巴克. The first character in Chinese means like star, but because like box in Chinese it may be difficult to find like a very positive term to describe it, so they just do it with the name. So you have like 星巴克 and Starbucks. So it's like a hybrid.
And the process for changing or adapting to a Chinese market when it comes to name is quite straightforward. You basically start with an ideation phase. You need to do some research again. The first you need to understand what is the original name. If you have like a German name or if you have a Swiss name, there is like a lot of understanding of why it's named as it is. So then you need to check also here in China, what does that mean here in China? Does it already exist here in China? Does people use it differently? Like Continental, I know was called the yellow horse or something here in China. I cannot remember exactly, but and these kind of things are sort of you have to find that out. So start again with the insights. And then it's basically our ideation where you toss out these potential new Chinese names. So through a workshop or through agencies or through like WeChats or friends and family or Chinese colleagues, this is where you sort of have the variety of the names. When you have done that, most of the names are either taken,
That's usually the case,
or they have a really strange meaning in Cantonese, or they are impossible to pronounce. So the first thing is to start to do a shortlist. So you shortlist these names into something less sort of is less names. So if you have like maybe say you have 20 names in the first ideation phase, you sort of have typically 5 or 6 names in a shortlist. And then you also need to do a pre-check against the legal, because you need to register this name. You need to check it with the logo on the website and so on. And then you need to do some testing. The names which are legal are possible to use. This may be only be 2 or 3 or 5, I don't know. Then do sort of, again, start talking to Chinese people. It's super important. And evaluate that, iterate that, make sure that you sort of get the right meaning and test it in different regions in China, in different social classes in China, among different kind of people from different kind of industries in China, and make sure that sort of you have everything right.
And you also can do like the Baidu index that we introduced,
that's a super good
in last section, because you can see what kind of related keywords people search when they type in your brand name.
Exactly.
So that would be really useful for you.
And at the end, you need to register that name. So it's on a sign off internally in your company. And then you need to run out and register it, and then again go back to the IPR help desk at the EUSME center. They are sure to sort of show you how that process is going to take place. Then you have design adaptations.
That's your expertise, right?
This is my expertise. Yes, that's right. First of all, logo, because you have changed your name, your logo may have to change.
Yeah.
You don't have any sort of Western characters anymore. You certainly have Chinese characters, so there's an adaptation may need to happen. If you have a symbol, this may be simpler. You can still keep that symbol, and then just change the name. But there is also a couple of things like symbolics, which you have to be aware of. How it is you have to check. So different kind of symbolics here in China mean something else in the West, and vice versa. So like the color red we talked about has different kind of meanings. When it comes to use interfaces, when you're talking to, if you're going to update your web page, make sure that it's working on mobile, because this is mobile first. But there's some small different kind of ways to do like user interfaces. Like where is the send button in WeChat is very different than send button in WhatsApp. And this is a small sort of small changes. And also the inputting of Chinese characters in sort of the whole user interface tend to sort of take more or less space. So the size you're sort of planning for your buttons and content boxes might also change. And then there is some culturally given icons, which you don't have any of in Western world. There's like the scan QR code icon. We don't have that. And the money icon. There's even a shopping bag icon, meaning something strange. And then what is this red envelopes?
Hongbao.
The Hongbao button. These kind of things we really don't have, right? So you need to update these accordingly to the Chinese sort of expectation when it comes to your stuff. And then of course there's a lot of things to do when it comes to marketing, because you're now entering the Chinese market, so your marketing has to update to the Chinese culture as well. And we have the marketing material adaptation process. We already talked about the target group and insights, right? So we're not going to talk about them. But when it comes to the message, you need to create a unique message towards your brand. And why do you, as a marketeer, create these kind of messages, and how do you convey what you would like to convey?
So definitely do like role plays in your target groups experiences. So when you have a very clear idea of the personas, like how they are like, how they would use the products, imagine that, and then try to create a very local, like this local is always a key, and very authentic story that would appeal to this Chinese group of customers.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to be creative as well.
Yes.
And as we talk about in the Baidu SEM techniques, like it's very like image driven, like on the search engine results, and you can tell that like from what we talk about on live streaming platforms, like video platforms, like Chinese people enjoy like seeing like images and like videos So when you are creating your own message and creating your own story, make sure that they're very creative in official sense. So not just in terms of an article. Don't assume that you can just post like articles and people will be very interested in reading. You have to be very funny, very creative, and create a very unique message that can address your target customers.
I also think it's one thing is key, that is to present your product or brand in such a way that it sets it apart from your competitors. And we hear that quite often. They say we have the best product, but you don't sell any good. So the question is, okay, if you have the best product, why aren't you selling any good? And most likely it's because you haven't communicated that you have the best product. So the way you have to communicate in this kind of sense is to show why is this the best product.
Yeah, show the unique value that you have for this group of Chinese customers.
Exactly.
And make sure that you do it in a tone and voice that is most culturally appropriate. For instance, there's this group of young millennials that they will enjoy reading more. They will enjoy like a personal touch or like a funny kind of memes, just like the West. But if you want to reach out to more premium class, or let's say you want to sell your baby food, like let's use that example, like parents, then you maybe need to use a more loving, caring kind of words to address them.
And the last thing you have to adapt to is the different kind of channels. I mean, we talked about the channels and the different kind of social media, which is different than the West, but it's also very different to the different kind of target groups. So you need to understand your target group, and then you need to understand which kind of channels are these target groups actually using. For instance, paid channels during the market entry is working quite nice. So, okay, because you are unknown, you rather have to put some money in to make sure that you are getting known.
Yep.
When you're nurturing the followers, use the social channels. But you can also use the sales platforms like Taobao to sort of becoming into like a marketing channel, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is an example of a communication plan. This is a brand coming to China. They had like one way to do this. They targeted the young romantics, new parents, influencers. This is sort of the people they was talking to. And they had a topic around sort of having a lighthouse product, which was very unique. But then of course there was this product launch, there was this corporate message, they communicating the whole technology and the educational benefits of that and so on and so forth. And of course they had a long European history, so they also would like to sort of present the history, which is quite different than the Chinese products, because Chinese products tend to not have that history. If you go to the Netherlands, or if you go to the Belgium, you can have like chocolate or beer, which is like several hundred years old, or Germany even more, which is very unique for Europe, which is very different than here, so you can sort of build upon that.
And that is very attractive to Chinese consumers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they would think that having such a long tradition and history give you a good reputation, and yes, you have had all these procedures, they will ensure like very high quality of products,
yes,
and which is not always the case in China, unfortunately.
Exactly. And then you need to adapt to the local tonality. So this brand, they sort of they had like this intimate, warm, personal tonality on this, which has to be China focused, but still with like some kind of an international mind in this, the leader international mind. And then they developed a lot of content. So there was Weibo posts, was photo sharing, BBS, and there was like WeChat campaigns. This was running for several months, of course. And then you sort of deciding on different channels you're pushing that content through. So in the social media, there was Sina and QQ Weibo. You can do the vertical BBS forums, web channels. You have your own brand website, of course. Third-party media, traditional media. PR, you have to look into that. We're not covering the PR part here, but it's also part of marketing in China. And KOL, WeChat corporations, and so forth. So this you have to very scope for yourself, and has to be sort of adapted to the brand you have. And then there's a couple of Chinese adaptation when it comes to the campaign tracking, the market insight, the social listening part, which we can look into.
So I'll talk about campaign tracking. So process basically identify touch points, you identify relevant metrics like cost per impression, cost CTC, like all these KPIs that you'll be also very familiar in the Western context. And you will also review this during and after the campaigns. So for input, you know how much you're gonna spend in different channels, like in different media platforms. And then for the outputs, you have all these impressions and all these KPIs. And the outcome, when it's basically, you can see here in the chart that you have buzz volume, search volume, you can do all these in China. You can analyze that and optimize your campaigns throughout your digital marketing campaigns. Yeah.
And this is important because you're spending some money on this and you would like to see sort of the effect of that spending. So if you have a campaign running over several months, for instance, you can during that campaign set different kind of KPIs and to track and to adjust, so making sure that you sort of get most back from your investment. And when you have finalized the campaign, you can sort of track how was the result of the campaign. Did you sell more? What did you get more followers? Did you have more brand ambassadors? And that sort of can be sort of evaluated and then make a new campaign later on that is sort of based upon this campaign with, of course, better result.
I remember working on this project that we were doing for this client, and basically we track the volumes during the campaign, and we saw that the video channel was doing really well, but there wasn't enough media input in terms of money in this channel. So we advised the client to put more money in this video platform, and it really worked, and it attracted way more followers in this case.
Yes. And we touched base upon this marketing insight. We're not going to deep into this, but you can also do these market insights with the new data during a campaign, for instance. Mm-hmm. So we already have the Baidu and the Weibo and the WeChat index. We didn't talk so much about Weibo index, but it's very much the same as.
It's very similar to what we talk about. Yeah.
So these kind of things you can utilize during the campaign as well, or during your marketing entry to China, to sort of track how is the performance when you're sort of entering here. And WeChat's index, for instance, is super cool because you can sort of follow it more or less in real time to see sort of how things are developing throughout the day or throughout the week.
And for Weibo Index, you can also see some of the very interesting comments by users, which would be helpful to adjust your campaign.
Yes. And then you have social listening. And social listening is trying to capture the social media content. And you do that quite often or normally by using keywords. Mm-hmm. So you set a couple of keywords, more or less like a KPI, and you try to sort of capture those keywords and try to understand how these keywords are sort of playing out in the social media. And if you have your target groups specified, you can sort of also track that towards the keywords and the usage of the keywords. So that is three things you're checking here, right?
Yep, I did quite a lot on this.
Yes.
And basically you need to partner with a local data provider who provide these tools so that you can access the dashboards, you can access what kind of data or what kind of social media platforms you want to monitor, set the keywords, and then they will get the data for you. And then you can, some of the data providers, they will do analysis for you as well, but you can also do it your own.
Okay, cool. So what I think is quite interesting here is that this is back to sort of the way of people thinking and the culture and the consumers, and so it's what the brand is talking about is not exactly what the consumers is talking about. So when you're trying to listen to what the consumers or the people are talking about in the social media, you're gonna quite soon realize it's not the same terminology which you're using internally.
And you can actually realize what areas of your products are actually really consumers really like, and what kind of areas that people dislike in general. And you can adjust your keywords in your campaign in a very useful way.
So let's look into a couple of case studies. We're closing to sort of soon to the end now. We're gonna show you a couple of case studies and look into that. There's like plenty of cases and plenty of people have done this. And we have the first one, a twist and drink.
Yep. So twist and drink, and if you are from Austria, you know it sells like juice bottles to children over the world. And basically, what they did was this WeChat campaign. They created like animations with HTML5. And using the drinks as characters. You can see like it's very cute here on the presentation. And they also created like a WeChat minigame, which engage 10,000 players per day during the course of the campaign and link them directly to their official account. So bear in mind that like games, mini games especially, are very popular. So if you are planning on like a digital marketing campaign, try to incorporate that.
There's a lot of Chinese people playing games. You see them sort of all over the place when they have spare time in the subway or in the buses.
Yep, on the mobiles. So
yeah.
Again, like back to our points, like make sure it's optimized for mobile.
Yes. Then we have L'Oral.
So in this case, they initiated like a Halloween campaign last year on Meipai. Meipai is like a short video app, which also is like a popular live streaming program. And the campaign basically encouraged users to upload and share their Halloween makeup videos for a chance to receive a free sample. And more than 11,000 users uploaded videos. And actually, like all these campaign videos achieved more than like 60 million views. So you can see the numbers here, like on the slide.
65 million.
Yeah, which is astonishing. Imagine that.
And I think the whole aspect of sort of using users, like the people who are online already, having their own opinion, and to resonate with them and use they as sort of the messenger for the product or for the brand. Is a super smart way. And the cool thing here in China that there is technology supporting this. Like if you did marketing in the 90s in Europe, it was like mouth to mouth. It was the word of mouth, right? It's a very slow way of spreading something like a meme. But when you have, like in this case, live streaming, the things go super fast and things spread really, really fast.
Yep. So on the Spanish hub page, basically this is like a Baidu search engine results page. So it shows you what will come up if you look for like Spanish ham, for instance, in this case. So back to what we talked about, it's very image heavy. So make sure that like when you do SEO, SEM, you have like very relevant images, and on the website you have plenty of good looking images as well.
And by food is also super important because you can have the delicious food and get really hungry. All right, and I think we had to sum it up in some kind of way, and the best way to sum it up is basically read the report. There is much more information in the report than we can cover in these 3 sessions, and there is quite a lot of aspects to be aware of. I think the most important part is that the digital tools available in China is nothing else but tools. And you need to really understand to who you're talking to and why you're talking what you're talking about, and then you make sure that you are doing everything sort of in a proper way. And it's not super easy, but it's also not super difficult. Get like the good people, get the good ideas, and push out what really is needed to the Chinese market.
Yeah, to give you some flavors of what is interesting about the report, you see on the slide here, we wrote it, of course, and you actually get numbers of what the approximate cost would be for different kinds of market research or different marketing campaigns. Yes. And also we've also provided like a list of local partners and KOL agencies that you can look into, and they all have very relevant expertise in China. They've spent a lot of time here, and they have cooperated with foreign companies. So definitely like get the report and contact different agents, and obviously like you can contact us if you have more questions.
And of course the EU SME Center. That's
Yeah.
sort of your point of entry.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.